The world is teeming with smaller, imaginary worlds born out of the minds of great creators and artists such as Frank Herbert, author of Dune, J.R.R. Tolkien, creator of Middle-earth, and George R.R. Martin, who realized his imaginary vision in the world of Westeros. Drawn to the scale and details of stories and universes such as these from a young age, I set out for my final ARP project to create such a fictional world on as large a scale as I could within the limited time frame of 8 months, and thus began the creation of the book at the centerpiece of my project. The first thing I did was create very rough drafts of each of the 3 maps you see here, so as to better visualize the rough location of each of my nation-states and thus ensure consistency. Indeed, the natural environment plays a major part in the political unfolding of the story, especially the bizarre topography. I couldn't have been as consistent as I was about the location of each people group had I not already been able to visualize them very well in my head. The only thing I did not create from scratch was the coastline. I got that from a random map generator and used it as though it were a blank map template. I ensured that my limited research in the evolution of culture and politics and nature's role in both of them, as well as how to realistically recreate a natural environment similar to that of Earth, was at least somewhat reflected in my story. However, it's important to note that this project was primarily a creative, artistic expression of my interpretations of historical themes and changes in political situations over time, and does not necessarily reflect what I consider to be a realistic depiction of these. As I say in my foreword, according to my research, many creative authors agree that it is unwise to attempt to base world building, an abstract artistic process primarily on logic, research, or real life inspiration. Most of the interviews I read claim that fiction writing, like many forms of art, cannot effectively, convincingly, or realistically be fueled by anything beyond human knowledge, intuition, or experience. You do not use Wikipedia to learn where next to stroke your paintbrush upon the canvas. This remains true in writing. So a lot of my story is simply intuitive and built upon the story arcs that I just felt in my heart were most thematically suitable for each country. If you check out the political map here, you'll be able to see most of the major states and take note of how they geographically evolved over time. Autu, the large country in the southeast of the largest and easternmost of the major landmasses, a continent known as Yurgord, is a state built on a radical love of individual independence and the protection of such a virtue, and their main storylines generally revolve around traveling around the world to realize a very specific ideology in as many places as possible. Rajord, immediately to its west, is a very similar interventionist country, but the ideology it promotes so passionately is the minimization of human manipulation of nature and the environment around the world, which often puts it at odds with the nomadic and highly advanced state of Cauban, who have no formal borders but live primarily on the Cauban Peninsula. These people embrace an involved future for their state by traveling around the world looking for resources for their endlessly growing wealth and technology. Flayton is surrounded by imposing mountain ranges on every side to such a degree that up until this point in history, they've stayed isolated in their own little valley, never having made contact with an outside group of people. The isolated valley created by these mountain ranges is easily visible on the topographical map. Much of their arc focuses on their attempts to be accepted in this new world, and to learn how to communicate with opposing sentiments and ideologies for pretty much the first time. Gerblilio, the smallest and weakest of the 6, are masters of the social arts and must use their strong negotiation skills and advantageous international relationships and connections to manage a relatively unreliable supply of wealth and goods while still upholding their core moral values, which have a recurring theme of non-confrontationalism. Primord, a country built on a systematically progressive government by nature, has started to be more careless in the decisions it continuously makes about its own government structure, and must redesign its own government so as to create a system that isn't as easily manipulated to service ulterior motives. You can find it on the west side of the map, located in the northernmost region of the continent of the same name. So, that's my ARP. Please feel free to take a look at the book attached to this website as a PDF. To all the people who have spent countless hours of dedication and support assisting me in this process, I can't thank you enough, especially my dad and ARP advisor, who managed to trudge through this entire thing and offer feedback, and my mom, who through her graphic design skills elevated this book to a level of aesthetic professionalism I would never have been able to achieve on my own, even with all the effort I put in. Thank you.